This is Present to Imperfect ICE Part 3. Now, let me give you a tip. If you have not yet watched Parts 1 and 2 of this series, please go back and watch those. If you don't, this one's not going to make a whole lot of sense. All right. I've got good news for you guys. The imperfect past is actually easier than the present tense. Let me say that again. The imperfect past is actually easier than the present tense. Okay? Let's talk about why. Present tense, estoy. Imperfect past, estaba. Present tense, juegas, you play. Imperfect past, jugabas. Present tense, quieren, they want. Imperfect past, querían. Present tense, tengo, I have. Imperfect past, tenía. Now I want you to notice. In the present tense, you have boot verbs or stem changing verbs. You've got verbs like jugar in the present tense where the U turns into UE. You've got verbs like dormir, to sleep, where the O turns into UE. You've got verbs like querer, where the E turns into IE. You have verbs like pedir, where the E turns into I. In the imperfect past, there are no boot verbs. There are no stem changing verbs. In the IBA forms, you never see an O turn into UE. You never see an E turn into IE. And that's good news. Let's give that a big yay. Yay! Also notice in the present tense, you frequently have just this random letter Y appearing. What's the old form of a star in the present tense? Estoy. What's the old form of dar in the present tense? Doy. In the past tense, you don't get that. You never have some random Y just appear and say, hey, here I am. In the present tense, you have a bunch of verbs where this random G appears in the old form. Tener, tengo, poner, pongo, hacer, hago, decir, digo. In the past tense, you don't have that. So, in the IBA imperfect past, there are no stem changing verbs or boot verbs. There's no Y in the O form. There's no G in the O form. That's good news. Yay! Now, please understand, I'm not saying that there are no irregular verbs in the imperfect past. There are two. There are two commonly used verbs that are irregular in the imperfect past. Most verbs are regular in the IBA form, but ser in the imperfect past is irregular, and ir turns into irregular. Now here's a fair and reasonable question. Hold it, Mr. Holt. Why are these the only two verbs that are irregular? What is it about ser and ir? Why would they be irregular in the imperfect past? Well, stop and think. What are the two most important verbs in Spanish? Ser and ir. What are the two most commonly used verbs in the entire Spanish language? Ser and ir. Now, because these verbs are so important and used so much, they're worn out, okay? It's like your favorite pair of pants that you wear all the time. After a while, they change, they stretch. Or your favorite pair of shoes, you wear them all the time. They stretch, they fade, they crack. Since ser and ir are the two most used verbs in the Spanish language, they are very, very irregular in the past, all right? Now, let's look at this. Ser turns into era, eras, era, éramos, eran. I was, you were, she was, we were, they were. Ir turns into iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, iban. I went, you went, she went, we went, they went. Now, if I just show you these, that's going to be hard to remember. So, here's a chant. Yes, there's always a chant. Ser turns into era, ir turns into iba. Ser turns into era, ir turns into iba. Okay, Mr. Holt, that's kind of catchy, but I think I need a little bit more than that to remember it. And these are really important verbs that you see all the time. All right, check this out. I'm kind of proud of this. Check this out. Mr. Holt, what does the word ser turn into? Well, ser turns into era. Era comes from ser. See that? Isn't that cool? Ser turns into era. Era comes from ser. Your turn. Ser turns into era. Era comes from ser. Now let's look at ir. See how that kind of looks like the verb ir, to go? Ir turns into iba. Iba comes from ir. Your turn. Ir turns into iba. Iba comes from ir. Now, if I were really good with technology, there's probably a more graceful and eloquent way to do that. But I think it's a good point. Okay, so let me say those chants one last time. Ser turns into era. Era comes from ser. Ser turns into era. Era comes from ser. And Ir. See how that kind of looks like the verb ir, to go? Ir turns into iba. Iba comes from ir. Ir turns into iba. Iba comes from ir. You now know all about going from the present tense to the imperfect past in Spanish. Yay!